parallel parking spaces. Those were brought into the development with the understanding that, there was an opportunity to continue the improvements on 2nd Avenue North. Similar that was done on the south side of the road where there were parallel spaces put in when that multifamily development was put in. It starts to create a streetscape. It's not just the parking spaces. There was an opportunity here to then improve the sidewalk, to then create a streetscape, do additional or, do landscaping along that perimeter, really engage the building with the roadway. So
they have to do that.
There are some things that are required for major thoroughfare. They are required to have landscaping, but they're not located on a major thoroughfare. So
They're required to do some landscaping.
They're required to do some landscaping, and then they're required to repair sidewalks or install sidewalks along their frontage, but not the parking.
Is there proposed landscaping meet the requirement, or does it exceed the requirement?
Their landscaping overall exceeds the requirement on their property by quite. I mean, we were looking at we stopped counting at like 300 to 400 shrubs or something that they're over the total. They have a lot of area that they are landscaping that exceeds the counts in our code. And then they have, they also have some trees around, and their perimeter landscaping provide kind of like, they have a walking path around their lake with shade trees around the perimeter.
I didn't see a lot of trees in the aerial that you had of the parking lot. I saw a lot of cement.
Yeah.
Well, I think
big parking lot.
So the parking lot doesn't have a lot of trees. We asked them to look at that, but they are having trouble with some of the trees and some of the drainage stuff that they have to have under. So we can, if you want them to look at that, we can look at it, but we also
Just the
need,
roots, you mean?
yeah, and because they're doing exfiltration there. So I don't know, they meet the minimum requirement, but before I say yes, we need to look at that with them.
Because if you're not parking.
that was a comment that staff had made to us through the process. And we certainly did look to see ways that we could potentially add additional trees. The problem is, as we mentioned, the entirety of that parking lot has got drainage underneath it. So every time you introduce a new landscape island in there to allow for the growth of a tree, you're taking away drainage that we needed to then figure out how to replace somewhere else.
Building the buildings because you have to put footers in and stuff. So I mean,
No, it's not under the buildings, it's under the parking lot. So we can only place the drainage underneath paved surfaces like that. So otherwise, our green space is being utilized for recreation amenities for the lake, and in the areas in the foundation planting area. We need to landscape it as well. So I think that we do understand the concern that was being raised. Let's be honest, that's a rendering. The trees being shown are not at scale. They're not showing a mature pattern on what they will be. We certainly meet every criteria in the code for the spacing, the number of spaces, the amount of trees that are required, the landscaping requirements within the parking lot. So we are perfectly code compliant. That is, again, unfortunately, this site is an extremely difficult site to develop on. We're doing our very best. We're trying to bring something to the city, an opportunity to redevelop on a parcel that's really sat there vacant and bring it into the city and make it a taxable, valuable piece of land.
Yeah, and I can appreciate that it's difficult to develop because it's a very unassuming waterway, that E4 canal, because it does connect, Lake Clark and Lake Osborne, both of which I've documented cyanobacteria blooms in. And so, it's a little bit surprising to me to see that the Lake Worth Drainage District, they require you to fix, obviously it's your side of the property of the canal. And then it's like, what about the rest of it? Are they going to do the other side of the canal? Probably needs just as much attention. But I think in terms of, in this question of like doing more, especially for sustainability, I think you do have an opportunity, especially with that lake and the buffer zones. And, I'm looking at the survey, and I know they require quite a lot of easement because they need to service the canal, of course. And so it gives you even less space. But, a buffer of native plants of even 10, 15 feet does huge amounts to reduce runoff pollution. But more specifically, like I would like to talk about this lake because in terms of doing more, I don't know if parking spots along Second Avenue is really what we would go for. I think a bus stop is needed there. Across the street, there's a bus stop and there isn't one on your side. But in terms of sustainability, I feel like, have you looked at this lake and instead of just doing a hole in the ground retention area, have you thought about like, a native artificial wetland or something that incorporates the runoff from your parking lot to clean it up before it goes into the canal?
I'm assuming, I mean, we'll have littoral opportunities, correct? Yep. And so I think in part of the design, the next stage of the design that we need to move forward as we go through the permitting process is introducing those littoral shelves, which is going to give us an opportunity to create some habitat right within the edges of the lake itself. That certainly benefit, like you said, to the water quality. It helps to address the water quality runoff issues, create some habitat for some foraging birds, different species that can take advantage of it, and certainly makes our pathway, our recreational pathway that goes around the lake, more interesting. So I agree with you. I think that's something we can certainly incorporate into the plan itself.
Is that going to be open to the public?
It was not, no. So part of
No public benefit to it?
public benefit to the residents within the city that are living there, yes. I think that what we're trying to do is,
Exactly.
the answer is no. I'll try that again. You're right. Absolutely.
For your.
Right.
part.
No, understood.
We'll say though that it is kind of a unique opportunity from a planning perspective to create, if they're serious and if you are willing to consider it, it would be an opportunity to restore a wetland habitat within the city. And even if we don't have people coming to the wetland habitat, we might have birds and animals coming to the
So
wetland.
no, that's, I mean, that absolutely.
So if that's something that is the public benefit in of itself, even though maybe a person from the outside couldn't see it, that you would be willing, we might get a better wetland habitat than we would just by the lake or drainage district. And in those kind of situations, we kind of don't want people as much,
Yeah.
Let's not.
today.
Yeah. And
You know,
And I-
path around or something like this, is anybody?
I think
Yeah.
I think that's maybe something to discuss because people do use that canal surprisingly. Like I see boats through there all the time.
right.
And I suspect it's people like, up in the northwest of our community that have docks and they work their way down to Lake Osborne, which is a great fishing area. I think that conversation should be had because I appreciate the parking reduction. I'm always a big fan of that. It's a lot of pavement, you're diverting, right now it's a big grass field. So right now, 100% of that property is permeable. Now you're going to take a lot of that permeability away. And I think, kind of like what Aaron said, you have an opportunity to do something really innovative. And when I see something like this, like a waterway connected to a water body connected to a polluted waterway, I think of projects like Wakota-Hatchie Wetlands and Green K, which divert water to clean it.
Right.
And I think you kind of have like this spot where you can really create something innovative. And I think that's something to talk about. Because parking on Second Avenue, like the mayor points out, and I ride my bike down this road a lot. And I do that a lot because nobody drives it, although more people will be driving it if this development is here. I think a bus stop would be helpful, but I think
There's a bus stop right across the street.
across the street,
Oh,
the one on the other side to go in the other direction, right? But I don't know if more parking spots on Second Avenue is really what we're looking for. But I think you have opportunity with wetland and covering up that communications tower that you can see. It's behind that, I forget what it's called, Cottages of Lake Worth. There's like a little stop behind it.
But don't, I mean, the buses go,
They go in both
direct.
directions,
Right,
right?
don't just go in one direction. Right.
So to your point, Commissioner Diaz, we can agree. We'd have to write it as the condition, but what we can do is for that sustainable bonus element, instead of the parking or the canal, that what we'll look at, we can have it as that as part of the sustainable bonus, we will provide the littoral plantings and native buffer along that north side.
And the lake.
Oh, that is the lake.
The
Is
lake,
the-
yeah.
Yeah. The
Yeah, and-
littoral plantings are on the lake by nature. And then the north end there is around the lake also.
Yeah, and you can't do littoral plantings in a canal because the district will really not like that. But, you know, I. see the-
They're already bad enough. That would be horrible.
And I see the dog park along the canal and I'm not like thrilled about having a dog park next to a waterway. So like, you know, buffers and things like that are, I think are, you're gonna have to squeeze them in there because of the easement that's required.
What's the dog park way over there, away from
All
like,
the buildings.
all the buildings?
Well, not all of them.
By the waterways, there's alligators.
Well, there's fence around it.
So we'll look at relocating the dog park also,
Or like a buffer.
which I just said, the Brian's gonna, we being Brian is gonna look at,
Oh,
Terry's gonna look at, I can't do that.
yeah, or like, you know, plant buffers and,
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
I like moving the dog park.
Okay, we're sort of going kind of around and a little lost the linear.
All
part there.
right.
Welcome to Lake Worth Beach.
Yeah, it's okay. We like it. I mean, this is going to be a good, and if however you want me to go through the rest of this presentation, I think really we've hit some major points that we needed to really discuss with you guys to get direction. So we knew where to go as far.
To the sustainable bonus with the numbers.
Sure.
again.
Sure.
Before we go on a little bit, as one of the wetland scientists in the room, I'd encourage you to go up to I lost the name of the street, where the water management district is. Where the main office-
Oh, on Gunway or Gun Club? Gun Club, yeah.
I was gonna say,
You're probably already familiar with the wetlands that are within the parking lot there.
you did a great job.
And there's a pond as well in there. I would go beyond a little bit, just littoral zone things, try to do something in that direction where there's flowway, where there's native planting along of a range of
Right.
elevations and so. And I would emphasize that canal actually gets a lot of wildlife on it.
Yeah.
And one of the concerns that we have of that area is as it gets more and more developed, a lot of the wading bird population that used to come into that because there was another one a little further north of you.
Mhm.
So if you can shift between open water lakes, which tend not to be great enterprise,
Right.
and more of it is wetland, the more you can do with that. You know, you're gonna have to talk to Tommy Stroud and see what he'll let you do in the water
Right.
messages, but they like that kind of thing, and we certainly would like it, and I hear Ms. Sita on the idea, I don't know how, I can't speak for my colleagues, but I don't think there's any problem with this kind of, it's a pretty creative environment, having some people walking around it, whether they're coming from the community, that's not gonna diminish the wetland benefits or the wildlife benefit that much. But I do hear you on the idea that simply doing some wetland restoration, we have nothing in Lake Worth, we're pretty high, we're pretty dry. If you were doing scrub restoration, that'd be great, but don't do it there. It's very hard to do. But there is some, I think that would, I'd be willing to count some of that toward the public benefit
Okay.
aspect. I would encourage the idea of maybe allowing some access either through a long creek ditch or, you know, I don't know how you work out exactly where.
It's not a gated community, is it?
It is gated, yes.
Well, there you go. Okay.
There might be some thought, can you allow access to that part? The other one, I think you mentioned, somebody mentioned revetment along the drainage canal.
Correct.
I don't know what Tommy Stroud would think about it, Director of Lakers Drainage District Canal, but there was at one time a stretch of one of their canals that was all natural vegetation. It was pine trees, saw palmetto, maybe some cocoa plum going right down to the water. It was gorgeous. And of course, it had a lot of wildlife benefit. They didn't like it all that much because they didn't have good access. But as long as they have access on one side, doing something like that would be a lot more appealing to us than a rock.
So maybe what I would suggest, it sounds like,
Plug, if you need us to plug a little bit.
right, no, absolutely.
Yeah,
I think that what we need to do is, and hopefully we can continue working with your staff and as we meet with the drainage district, we talk about some of these ideas and develop our plans and permitting plans as we can incorporate those components and there's value brought, then that can then be deducted ultimately or be one of the potential benefits to the sustainability bonus program. right?
We'll have to
Yeah.
haggle over the price.
We can,
Right.
But it's certainly.
Let Aaron speak.
yeah. So what we do is, the way your condition is written is we don't actually put in the ordinance, what they have to do. What we do is we say in the ordinance, it's like generally the sustainable bonus will address these concepts as directed by you all. But the actual dollar figures are not part of the ordinance. What we say is the condition of approval is that permit. If you don't show that you spent the money, you give us a check. That's the way the condition writes, because if somebody's $1,000 short because they got a deal, and they can't show, we're like, fine, give us a check for $1,000 and make up the difference. They either have to do the improvements for the full improvement value, or they cut us additional funds to the city at permit to get their permit.
More than 50%, more than the 50%.
More than the 50%. The 50% is a check that's written.
Right.
So if whatever that they're not meeting, so if it's that 190, if it's that whatever, then that's the check that they write in addition to the 50% at permit. And we've had that happen before where, something didn't work out and they couldn't do it. And we're like, okay.
So I believe we've heard you guys very loud and clear as to what you're willing to, consider or entertain, and with those you're not. So we'll continue working down the path of working on the environmental side of this and how we can incorporate that into the plans.
Double dip, you got public parking, $100,000, and then you list on-street parking on the bottom for complete streets, and that's your double dip.
Well, what I will say is that if you notice in your staff report that staff only brought to your attention 2 of that list. So the applicants that in your packet, you'll see the applicant's justification. You won't always see everything in the applicant's justification or all of that qualify in your sustainable bonus analysis, because many times we don't agree with the applicant. So the number that's presented to you that we are qualifying are the things that we as staff feel meet the ordinance and your subsequent resolution. If there's a discussion of opinion, like now, we'll bring that discussion to you and identify that in your staff report for your direction. But things that we're certain on because of previous direction, your resolution in the ordinance, we say this meets it or this doesn't. The applicants is their justification statements. That's their riff, right? They can put whatever they want in that.
But it is 150,000, and if one is 100 and one is 50, and it's both
Same parking.
double indemnity.
Yeah.
But we're not.
Right. So I mean, I think it'd be best for all of us, we just move past that slide, because at this point, I think we've right. We understand where we stand on this one. So I think where we're going to go, again, we're going to pursue our opportunities along the canal within the lake to make some improvements that can certainly be counted.
Question about the clubhouse side.
It looks like a
Um,
bunker.
well, it looks like to me with the pool, and it looked like the men's restroom and the women's restroom were pretty much identical. Can we turn those into like family restrooms?
Or have,
Oh, we're talking about the bathroom building on the bottom?
I think it's better to be gender neutral, and I think it's better for mothers and or
Have it-
parents that have kids, like just make them gender
Just-
neutral.
well, and have one that's a family restroom, like a handicapped family
Well,
restroom.
They're only
Like-
single stalls.
They're only single stalls.
Right.
So it could just be you.
Also be anyway.
Just yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it's just men and women.
Yes.
Can you go back to that other rendering of Second Avenue? This is the one up above that, right? No, go back down. You're there.
No, this is second, right here.
Right.
Okay, so what was the other one? Right there. Gate.
Oh, this is the amenity building. This is interior.
Okay.
This is the community center. It doesn't front Second Avenue. This is,
Interior to it.
Right.
yeah, it's interior.
That's what I thought was the storage area, so it's in there.
That's what it was.
It is.
It does look like a storage facility.
It's.
We're
this-
not knocking you guys, we're just giving our opinions. I'm not an architect. but I barely even draw a stick figure. I mean,
It's this building, Commissioner.
okay, thank you. Do you guys have security, ring doorbells, security cameras?
That's actually one of the conditions that are actually a part of this as well, is that we have on-site security as a part of it. So
On-site security?
The only condition is a video security system for the property. We did not specifically require the Ring doorbells
Cause
themselves.
that's name.
So, but they could they wouldn't necessarily have to do a doorbell camera, but they could do security cameras on the thing as another option. So if you specifically want each unit to have a video doorbell of some type, we can include that as a condition.
I think,
Entrances are from the inside, correct?
It's an internal corridor, correct?
Not exterior, like.
So again, I mean, there's surveillance cameras that would be throughout the property. There'll be I mean, there's obviously going to be a leasing facility here that'll have on-site staff that are there on a daily basis during the operations hours. I don't believe that they're 24-hour staff.
So you,
Right. So it's closed circuit,
Monitors.
right, but they don't have, there's not.
There's someone sitting watching it for 20.
Come on.
What he said was that it's, they have a monitor, the circuit TV is a monitored feed. So there's a company that would monitor.
Okay.
I the only one with questions.
I have a couple questions. I'm just waiting.
Um,
My questions are more interior.
and the only thing on A-40, I don't know what page it is. on there. The grays are just boring and I'm like gray, gray and gray. That's the best we can do.
Well,
See A-4.0,
Does it have the orange
No.
accent on it?
gray, green.
I,
Drawing that showed them.
it's the,
yeah, I think what happened, I'm not sure exactly what page that is, but what you see on the screen with the orange accents was something that was added after probably when that page was created. So it's certainly going to have the orange accent.
Okay, I'm done.
I have a couple questions. These are 5 stories, correct?
That's correct.
Now, each of those, there's 3 separate structures, correct? 3.
There's 3 primary buildings and then the one central
Right.
community building.
How many elevators are in each building?
One building.
I would ask for 2, because if one breaks down and somebody's on the 5th floor, they can't get down or up. We've done this before on different developments. It's okay. So that's, as a person who's mobility challenged, I think of things like that.
And
Oh, I wish, my dreams. Is that how I got that broken? So that's okay, you'll do 2 in each building? Using your mouthpiece, hi.
So he's literally running numbers on his phone right now to try to figure out all of this is a cost factor that goes into it. So what I think we can do is take it, because we have to come back for one more time.
Yeah.
Without significant changes. though.
Yeah, but I think the elevators, if
Your client just wants to talk to you.
No.
for a second.
we could do 2, the numbers are run. We can do 2
heck of a phone.
elevators. I look, I talk, he does numbers. I keep going until he gets there. So yes, we can do the elevators.
Okay, great, that's perfect. And then I would like to go back to the 3-bedroom issue, even if you have a few 3 bedrooms. That's a family, this is a family development. You've got dog parks, you've got some sort of playground. Let's have some kids there. That's my second one. And my third one was another one, which was interestingly just escaped my mind right now. Hopefully it'll come back. That's sad. I know I have my three bedrooms, elevators.
While you're thinking of that, what is the arrangement for garbage and recycling?
Laundry, is there a laundry in each unit or is it on a floor? How are the laundry?
I need to refer to our architect again. But I'm sure we have laundry in each floor. There's not a central laundry, right? Every unit has laundry, correct?
Every unit has a laundry? Perfect, thank you. That's great. And I think Chris had a question.
What's the arrangement for garbage and recycle disposal? Is it everybody's taking it down the elevator, down the dumpsters, or? And my wife always brings it up, because her daughter down in Miami lives in this an older building, but it's pretty cool. It has a room where you go to drop and
Right.
shoe. And you can choose whether it's going into the recycle, and it has about 4 different ones. And so at the bottom, it pops it into the, like,
Right.
whether it's garbage or whether it's recycled glass or recycled whatever.
Very good question. I'm gonna have to try to stall again.
Right.
So-
Little chit chat.
It's the only place I've
We-
seen it.
I know where the compactor and the dumpster is, but I'm not.
They just, never mind. They just had a, for garbage.
Hello, Mayor, members of the commission, Shane Laxo with Richmond Group 477 South Rosemary. Yeah, we do have valet trash service, so residents can pay an additional fee and get the trash picked up.
And if they don't want to pay the additional fee, what happens?
I
They
believe
hoard their garbage
they take it to the dumpster.
out.
Oh,
outside.
I think it's included in all of them. It's all valet. But it's a fee that goes on to the rent.
In addition to the rent,
Yeah,
they have no choice.
correct. It's part of the rent.
It's included in the rent.
Yes.
Okay. What is the rent for these places?
The rent for these it's actually essentially a workforce unit pursuant to your code. I'll go get the numbers, but it's basically right at 120% AMI for both the 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom. I believe it's 20. Yeah, I believe it's 2,500 for the 2-bedroom and just under 2,000 for the 1-bedroom.
2,500 for a 2-bedroom apartment?
Look at the ranges there. If you look at the 100,
Holy.
look at this.
But you had said that you were gonna have them in all factors. And
So the county,
Right, so there's-
what our ordinance requires is that you have to, you can't pick and choose, right? So if you do a program, you have to do the program. And the county program requires a 25% allocation for each of their groups. So this is, you can see the allocation that they've proposed as 7 in low income, 7 in moderate, 2, and 8 in middle. And low would rent for a 1-bedroom between 1,000 and 1,300. A 2-bedroom would rent for 1,200 to 1,600 a month
For the workforce?
for low. So that would be the 7 units would be renting in that range. The moderate one would rent between 1,300 and 1,700 for a 1, 1,600 and 2,000. And then the mod 2 would be up to 2 to 2,500 or 2,484. And then the middle would be a similar value.
Well, my bigger concern is that on the bottom and over here, it says middle, there's 8 units. They're gonna, only 8 that are gonna rent for 120 to 140% AMI. So. That means everything else is above that.
Well, you can, on the county program, you can always, let's say you can't find a tenant in that price point, you can always rent at the lower value. You're just because something is income restricted to the higher value, it doesn't mean you cannot, so you just can't.
What developer has ever said, I think I'll go a little lower? With all due respect, I mean, I'm not anti-development, but it's a business and that's fine. But we're talking about housing our citizens. And $2,000 for a 1-bedroom apartment or 2-bedroom apartment is,
And the
That's a lot of
question I
money.
would have is, this is not exactly a prime location in the middle of town. Now, with that wetland there, it's gonna be pretty cool. But are you really gonna find people at 2,000 for a 1-bedroom? I mean,
Well,
I can tell you that some colleagues of mine at the Water Management District, a
Couldn't
2-people
afford that.
couple, they looked at 2,200. They couldn't afford it.
right.
And
And
that's professionals that would.
believe me, I completely understand.
well,
Everyone who works in my office has the same situation. And I think that, what we all have to understand, you're right. The point that you just made of the location of this property and that it's not going to capture the types of rents that you would get on Lake or Lucerne or anywhere in the more popular areas of the city. So what we're talking about are the deed restricted units. These are the deed restricted units.
30.
What market rate probably will fall exactly in line with these. And that is not until we can bring it to the market, do we know exactly what those rents will be. How many people can qualify? for the housing because they have to have their credit run, right? There has to be a certain, they're not going to rent to folks who can't afford to pay it, right? So if they're not able to fill those spaces or fill those units, they're going to have to make the business decision that's appropriate to be able to lease the units out. So look, everything is escalating. The costs of construction are significantly higher than they've been anytime over the past 5 years. So all the costs of bringing these developments to fruition are getting harder. So, but they still have to meet what's available in the marketplace. And so again, these are these restricted. What Shane, I think, was intending to say when he was up here was simply the fact that those units are probably going to fall within these categories, regardless whether they're market or deed restricted.
And are you confident, and that's your business, not ours, but are you confident that if they did were to fall on that, you can make this thing go?
Right. I mean, that's what he's saying is we think that a lot of those units, yes, they're going to be in that 120-ish range. If that's what their projections are, in the 120% range of AMI.
And the 120 is the 2000.
It's about the two.
So then if we require a 3-bedroom, or let's say 4 3-bedroom units, we're essentially looking at. If you went with the last category.
Aaron, would you mind clicking it so you can see it?
$3,300 a month.
Can you enlarge that a little bit?
Yeah, I was gonna say, just make it full screen or something. It might be a little easier to read.
And those numbers are not developed, those are.
No, yeah, exactly.
Right.
So if we were to require 3 bedrooms,
Bedrooms.
where would you propose that you would put that in your unit composition? Now I'm gonna have you change your recipe, sorry.
So it's hard to do it all on the fly, but we can. So I was just talking to Shade. We can put 5, I think you mentioned 5 3-bedrooms. So we can find a way to put 5 3-bedrooms in. Where, if any of them would be restricted, I'd have to actually go back and look at the county ordinance. So the way this works by your ordinance is we have to follow the county ordinance. I actually don't know the answer to that question off the top of my head. So what I can do is when we come back for second reading, I'll work with Aaron and we'll figure out how that might fit. If any of them fit, I just don't know the answer. So I don't want to make a promise I can't keep.
No, thank you for even considering. I would like to see 3 bedrooms listed in that unit composition because we do have single parents out there. We do have people who are, I mean, you all know the cost of everything's going up. And, to me, I'd rather have a family in a 3-bedroom getting discounts, on their housing and being to know they have a nice, clean, new roof over their head. And that's what we're really trying to do up here, right? Is create new housing stock that really helps our residents.
Sure.
That doesn't help, I mean, people from who are moving in, that's great, but we have people here who literally have no place to go.
Yeah, and there's 2 elements to it, right? The more units you put on the market, not you, but the more units that we can get on this market in this county, the more that there will be competition for the user driving down the rents. Part of the reason the rents are where they are, not all, I'm going to be clear, is that there's just not enough. And then we also add in the restrictions to make sure that we've got some guaranteed. And so we're trying to move all that. I will look at the 3 bedrooms. We'll look at how that impacts from the county ordinance. I have to be bound by what that is, but whatever that is, we'll make that work.
Segue, William would like to
Oh,
to pop in. So William, if you want to.
Well, as the author of the city's affordable housing program, and we're bringing in an amendment to you all, there is a provision that allows the city to buy down some units or supplant part of the sustainable bonus program monies to facilitate further deed restrictions on units or additional units to be deed restricted. If you're open to that, we can work with them to see, based on our ordinance, what subsidy would be required to have some portion of those 3-bedroom units deed restricted.
So
and
we-
what was brought up earlier, the deed restriction is 25 years for the city. I don't really know what it is for the county.
the county's 20, but here's what I would propose. Thank you. I don't know if you could see me. William, I'm looking at your.
Yeah, I can see you. I just see the back of your head.
Oh, God. So I'm gonna wear my yarmulke next time I come here. Uh, It's like my 21-year-old. That's what he says. She's got the sense of humor of my 21-year-old.
Well, yeah.
So here's what I would propose. If we can, so we've got some direction. We're gonna add 5 3-bedrooms. We'll look at how we can work within the ordinance restrictions, both yours, the counties, to work through the affordable issues, whether it's some of what William just said, whether it's county specific, so that when we come back to you on second reading, that we will be able to tell you, we've got the 5, here's how the workforce can work, whether there's a subsidy, all those elements to whether there's a sustainable bonus to it, so that we can all work out the math and all of it too. Because while Shane was great with the elevators, I think we've reached the limits for this.
As a business owner, I appreciate that, and I know it's all return on investment, cost of things are going up. But we are always considering the future of our city,
Of course.
and to make sure that we even have, 5 out of this project, to me, would be a good service to the residents. So I thank you for listening to all of our demands.
Just for
We need-
clarification,
That's why it's shiny. I do this.
just for clarification for William and I, so I know we've talked about different ways because you have this gap, right, in sustainable bonus. So we've talked about littoral plantings and creating wetland habitat.
Right.
And then we've also talked about perhaps looking at buy down for sustainable units. So would you be looking at beyond the difference for the actual check that they're writing to us for that first 50% could be utilized for some additional buy down? So would you like us to look at that? with
So
the
we would be giving up some of the money that we are now currently going to get in order to get something.
So more affordable beyond what,
So what would be buying down additional units to, in accordance with our ordinance beyond, so William, are you still there? Do you?
I'm still here. I'm here on the picture. Yeah.
Okay, so can you pop in this part? Because this is a code amendment that's coming to you probably next month. So it would be kind of concurrent with this, which would allow you to utilize the sustainable portion of the sustainable bonus that's paid to the city, and also the portion that the applicant could address through qualifying improvements, would allow you to take those monies and direct them towards buying down either regular units or further buying down workforce units to restrict them at a lower level. And so you would basically be saying, here's your sustainable bonus money. We can give you, we don't have to cut us a check, but instead you have to do more workforce. So
So that's the public.
How can we make sure that that's done 5 years from now? I guess that's my question. Who babysits this?
So
We do.
So there is a covenant that is, we do, basically. There's a covenant, and there's a reporting period, and the county has been doing this for quite some time. And so in addition, they will have to report to us that they're maintaining their affordability criteria. They're going to have to notify us that the county has certified them. And then the county will also look if they're deed restricting as well, their units for the county, or not deed restricting, income restricting, because it doesn't go with a deed, it's a covenant. So sorry, Elizabeth.
can we get,
There are some issues. I know that it just came up, I think at the regional, Treasure Coast Regional Planning, that there were some apartment complexes west that said they were, and then it turned out they weren't. And the county was not following. I forget what the name was.
Yeah.
One just sort of general comment. We talked a little bit about, how is this going to work given that it's a kind of out of the way location? And this is just a comment. I don't know if it's useful to you or not. But it seems to me that one thing that you can, if you emphasize, this is out of the way, so it's quieter. It's on the canal, it's got some wildlife exposure. You have a pool, you have a common area thing. If you do something fairly interesting with the wetland part and some access to the canal and all of those things, you may be able to draw a very different segment than what wants to live in the middle of downtown. And work that. I think that's not a crazy approach, but emphasize some of those outdoor sorts of things, some of the play areas for kids and so on. I think we would be happy about it. And I think it might also be a good business decision.
And I'm going to make a comment. Years ago, when I first got out of law school, I rented an apartment on 10th Avenue North, right across, it was a windy, right. I was on the 3rd floor, and from 10th Avenue North, it just looked a bland, horrible building. You go upstairs, they had a balcony and it was a wetland. It was a nature preserve down. I fed the raccoons. I mean, it was beautiful. And I did. So, well, I threw marshmallows. I threw candy. But I mean, it was very surprising because on the one hand, it really didn't look like what, but you walked in and it was like, oh my God, it's gorgeous. So that can be done.
That's an angle, I
Right.
think, and I think there will be a few.
Commissioner Stokes, you're late with your light
Yeah,
pass.
sorry, no. I just
Get
want
that
to
man a
be
battery.
careful with, I'm happy to use our sustainability bonus money to help with affordability, but we also are looking at it to help with mobility and
Mhm.
other things. And I can't help but think about the county housing bond that just passed, and we need to get that money into Lake Worth before we start spending our own money, I feel like.
So I would encourage you all to talk to the county commission. They actually, the bond itself is not self-executing. So the bond passed,
Right.
but the way I was involved in it.
Okay.
I work the Housing Leadership Council, I work the Economic Council, the Business Development Board, like I do this. I live in this county. I want my kids to come home. I really do. I think even my wife does. But what happens with that is the county has to actually now vote the commission to issue the bonds. They're not required to issue the bonds. So those folks who want that will need to push that. There's no guarantees one way or the other because the voters voted the referendum. The referendum just allows them to issue the general obligation bond for that purpose. So the commission needs to now
Encourage them.
get to Ms. Baker and say, okay, Ms. Baker, let's bring these bonds back and let's vote on getting them issued. And they could do it in tranches, which in individual, pieces. So that kind of thing. I don't know what they're doing right now with it. Obviously, you have 3 new members of the commission who weren't there when the bond was voted on. But, if it can be very useful and certainly it could help supplement you if you can get into that process. But I think it's still a little ways away.
Do you mind? I know you've had interactions with the county manager, county administrator. Can you follow up and try to find out where they are?
Certainly, yes, we need to know where they are on that.
Yeah.
I'll do that.
Commissioner Diaz.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, I reiterate that concern of bringing in other money to help, buy downs, I think are the preferred method of doing that these days in terms of land use. So looking forward to having that conversation. I think, maybe if we're getting close to wrapping up, I have it's less of a question of you guys and maybe a suggestion, similar to the bus stop, you will be asking Palm Tran to put that in. And I think it might do you a service, and I'm just putting this on your radar right now. Since it is a totally open field, it's very open. There's no gate right next to the canal. And I don't know, you might already have addressed this, but on the district side, on the drainage district side, I would say look into putting a gate there, because south of where you're at, there has been issues with like encampments and
Oh,
unofficial landfills and things like that.
unofficial land.
To put it gently, there's probably a lot of mattresses and sofas there.
Under the bridge.
Yeah.
Well, like just along the canal, like you can walk from, Second Avenue just along the canal, which is now nobody does it because it's a wide open field. It's very visible, but I suspect if you put, plants in a pond and things like that, you're going to have to,
You might want to have access to it.
you're going to have to look into that.
Leave the landfill issue.
Yeah, because you can see it just walking along the canal. There's quite
Okay, have we been, does staff have, do we all have understanding of what we're doing?
Madam Mayor, William has his hand up.
Thanks, Melissa. I wanted to correct the record, for the record, William Waters, Community Sustainability Director. The bus stop that's being discussed on Second Avenue is actually a school bus stop because there is no Palm Tran route on Second Avenue North.
Oh.
Both the villages of Lake Worth and villages of Lake Osborne put in Palm Tran bus stops on Lake Worth Road and school bus stops on Second Avenue North. So it would be different. I also want to let you know that if we were to utilize some of the sustainable bonus money for the buy downs, the 3-bedroom units would fall into the very lowest end of mod 2 and in the middle range of mod 1 under the county's restrictions.
Because for the buy down, we would use the buy down for our limits, not the county's program. So if we're buying down to our limits or less, correct, William?
Right, and our limit on a 3-bedroom unit is 105% of AMI.
So that, because I'm looking at the street view now, that bus stop that I'm looking at that has the little green roof, it's super simple. That's a school bus, not Palm Tran.
Yes.
You telling me on second? Okay.
So there is no problem.
There is a bench with a little roof over it, but
School bus.
but it's school bus. Okay.
So someone would have to walk to Lake Worth Road from Second Avenue North down to Lake Worth Road to get the bus.
And were we pretty clear that anything you can do, I hear you on the exfiltration, so, but anything you can do to increase shade trees, big shade trees in the parking lots is gonna be, I think,
We're all about trees.
trees and shade, you know,
We-
we don't know about heat islands off of concrete.
Yeah.
It's asphalt. all that.
Yeah, we heard that, and William was very clear about that too. So was Aaron, and that's why they've been looking at it, but they'll go take another look for sure.
What comes to mind is the dentist that's down in either Boynton or Delray. They were one of the earliest ones to do the major storage things underneath their parking. And I seem to remember they worked in islands for shade and stuff as well. Seems like you can.
There are landscape islands for every 10 cars in accordance with our requirements.
With
our
a big
minimum.
tree on them?
Yes, with a shade tree. So there are every 10 spaces, there is a tree island.
Huh, I didn't see them.
Yeah, well, as Brian said, they're not shown as full mature.
Mhm.
So one of the things we can try to do is see if we can
Big-
show that the canopy will go from what it looks like this on the,
Right.
this is a silliness I think I'm doing right now, but like this on the image to actually like this on the image as it grows. So what we'll do is see if we can't give you a little bit of an image that shows it as it matures out. And I don't know about the dentist, but some of it's just going to be a function of how much of that exfiltration is under there. And so we'll coordinate back and see if there's any way to,
Yeah, I only mentioned it because
Yeah.
they actually did a tour there and the planning association took us through because they did a lot of these kinds of things quite innovative and they did manage to combine both.
So I don't know if Williams care, but I'm still not clear on how much money we're talking about to go towards the wetlands. Is it just the approximately 190K difference, or is it also potentially additional monies that may not take the full sustainable other 50%, but would you be looking at going over the 50% at all? No, not 190K for wetlands and buy down, but would you want to look at any other monies beyond that or do you want to stay with your about 190K to look for both wetlands and workforce?
Well,
buy
they're
downs?
supposed to give us 287, right?
So there's only like, yes.
The condition of approval could just be that they could utilize the value of that littoral improvements and possibly buy down units to the point where they only have to pay the 50% required of the commission. It may only get us 1 3-bedroom unit and a really nice littoral, or it might get us a mediocre littoral and 3-bedroom units with deed restrictions. I think that's for the developer to work out.
And that's something that you all can talk about between now and the next meeting.
We just need
Yes.
direction on how much money you want to spend.
What William just
basically.
they want to spend a lot. I could feel.
So it looks like we're going to keep just the half.
Yeah, well, and we can agree with what William just said. We'll make that work. We'll work through all the numbers.
So the condition will be what William just said, right?
Sure.
No, I'm
That's-
sorry.
Whatever he said.
It's taped.
Right. Okay. We have one, Madam Clerk, do you have any public comment cards?
I have two, Madam Mayor.
Let's hear them.
The first one is from Roy Foster, Managing Partner, Village of Valor. We have reviewed the Richmond Group's site plan and architectural renderings of the proposed residences at Lake Worth multifamily development located on Second Avenue North. Based on our review of the site plan, approval of the requested waiver will not have an adverse impact on our adjacent property. The residences at Lake Worth project was designed in a fashion to create no negative impacts to our property. As the adjacent property owner, please accept this letter of support for the site plan approval. And my second and last comment is Keith Morin, Regional VP of the Riverview House. As representative of Riverview House property to the south, we support the development proposal. The proposed architecture and landscaping update will look better than the existing vacant property, and the proposal includes a turn lane, which will help traffic. The development will be a good fit for the area. That's my final comment.
Thank you. We have two public comments here. Ramsey McLeod was first, and Peggy.
Ramsey McLeod, 24 South C Street. The biggest reason I was up here, but since we've had a discussion, I have a couple other ideas. So one, I have a real concern about Second Avenue North, the quality and condition of the road itself. And second, the amount of traffic that's going to go through there. I went through the numerous numbers and everything from the traffic study. I did not see a turn lane on the drawing or in any of the recommendations. There was no recommendation for improvements to Boutwell Road in Second Avenue South, no improvement to Congress Avenue in Second Avenue South, and nothing about the Boutwell intersection in 10th Avenue North. With all that traffic coming out of this development, I think it's going to impact those intersections, but the numbers say there's hardly any traffic going there, so I don't think there needs to be any improvement. The road is only a 2-lane road. I did not see any indication in the reports that there will be an east-headed turn lane into the entrance. So if someone else sees that in the report, it wasn't in what I read that was posted online. Secondly, I don't agree that any improvements that they have required to make for the Lake Worth Drainage District or anything over that they choose to do should gain any merit with the city to give them qualifications for sustainability bonuses. And third, I really have a problem with the lowest income, only 7 units, and there's 60 to 80% of the AMI. That is above a lot of the median income of the residents in our city, and I just don't see where this becomes affordable housing. You can label it workforce housing. Maybe somebody has a job that pays them that much, but just as the attorney or the other gentleman admitted, people in their own offices can't even afford and probably wouldn't even be able to afford these residents. So I don't consider it a bonus to the city, have some real concerns, and I don't agree that on-street parking is going to be safe. If you've ever ridden up and down Second Avenue North, it's a very poorly conditioned road, and they don't pay attention to what the speed limit is. Thank you.
Peggy Fisher?
There's some like literal jumps on that road.
Just to correct the record, there is an eastbound turn lane as part of the project.
I think it was wetland in a lot of the point and the road. That's my.
Peggy Fisher, 508 North 8th Street. My comments are more about the commission. And I've sat through several of these meetings where you have gotten a project coming to you, where you have asked the developer many different questions, many different things that you want, which is fine. That's you doing what your job is. Except I think those things like we want 3 bedrooms, staff should know that. Staff should be getting policy direction on new multifamily developments coming into the city. We want it to have 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. We want it to have Ring doorbells. We want it to have more than 1 elevator. Those are things that if you would set some policy direction for them, that then they wouldn't be things that we're sitting in a meeting and the developer is trying to run numbers, because staff would have already known those things and addressed those things when it comes to them. And I just think that would be a more efficient use of everyone's time. I'm not discounting your input or anything like that. I just think there are some directions that you as a body, if you have a strong feeling about, you should come to a consensus and convey that to staff so staff can implement that policy.
Thank you. Okay, we have a public comment card from the clerk.
Should we have a motion to
Approve
Approve with the
condition.
conditions that William had said prior to in regards to the sustainable bonus.
Right. So what I have is I have that the remainder of the 50% of the sustainable bonus shall be utilized for littoral plantings and at least a one bedroom attainable unit in accordance with the maximums of our.
No, 1 3-beds.
One 3-bedroom unit. I
At least
apologize.
one
One, I have 3-bedroom. I said 1 bedroom. At least one
1 3-bedroom?
3-bedroom. You only have about 180 to 190,000. So if you're going to do littoral plantings, wetland, so
We're
that
gonna
is,
add 5 3-bedrooms,
Total.
but one will be in the workforce range.
yes.
One of those 5 will be.
So is this the money that, is this the money that taking, are we taking the money out of the check they're supposed to give
No,
us? We're
no.
taking it from the other, okay.
Yes. And then there would be the addition of the 4 3-bedrooms. It would be to look into the feasibility of adding trees and water access to the northern canal. I forgot what it was called. It had a very, the Fritz Canal. And and then I had a note to look at a pull off for a bus stop. And I guess my other question to you
2
was
elevators,
the 2 elevators and
moving the dog park.
Move the dog out.
moving the dog park. And then on the street parking, do you want the street parking to just turn into like a pull off for package delivery and whatever and a bus
Well, if
stop?
it's a
Or do you
gated
want to keep
community,
it?
all right, let me think for a second. If it's a gated community and I want to go visit my friend who lives in there, how do I get in? Where am I going to park?
Same way you do it at apartments. Just close the
Well, I don't
buzzer and
Oh,
Say,
okay.
I'm here to see so and so.
There's guest parking in there?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay. That is-
What if the front would be a pull off for like Lyft and Uber?
Yeah, yeah,
rideshare
yeah.
people?
DoorDash.
That's what I was suggesting is a ride share or a delivery
delivery,
space and maybe a pull off for the school bus.
There you go.
So maybe that might reduce some of their costs.
Right.
And they can, so to look at that. And that was it.
Okay.
So I made the motion. Is there?
The only thing I would say is that what we talked about, at least I think what Commissioner Diaz and I were talking about, was not just littoral zone, but try to do something a little bit more wetlands oriented. Look at what's going on at the Water Management District as one inspiration for it.
Okay, so littoral and look at the creation of a wetland.
Mhm.
And then obviously they're balancing competing interests because their main goal is to drain for the C-51 subbasin they're in. So as well.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's examples of that around where instead of open water or retention pond, you can have a little bit of both. So there's not a lot of space, but there's some space. 0.8 acres is pretty sizable retention pond. You can get a lot in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Glad you brought it up. I was hoping that they would do that.
We read your mind.
Mhm.
Okay,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate your willingness to talk to us. Yep.
Commission, it's William, and I just wanted to sort of add to, not to the record, but explain some of the C-51 canal. There have been enough projects approved that the entire Lake Worth side of the drainage district canal, the Keller Canal and C-51 canal will have to be stabilized all the way to behind I guess the city's fire station, because we've got Waterville completed. Advantis is being built. There's 2 industrial projects that are having to stabilize the bank. The hotel apartment complex, which is now called something different, Avery, has to stabilize the bank. So one property is not in the city. That's on the canal, and then the Romano properties at the end of Boutwell Road are not. And the other property that's not going to have it stabilized, or it's not stabilized or being scheduled for improvement, is the area along the side of the apartment complex that already exists out there and the Marlin Industrial Park. But the Marlin Industrial Park did do some stabilization based on the requirements that were in place when it was built, I think in the 90s or early 2000s. So.
Thank you. We have 2 more things.
So our side of the canal is gonna be Chef's Kiss.
Motion to approve the residential rates for the moment.
I'll second that.
No,
Well,
we're having conversation.
yeah.
Why do I have a third amendment to the Benny's leave?
That was bold.
Let's go.
Oh, okay. Thank you. We discussed this,
Yes, we did.
so we have a motion.
Motion to approve the, I believe it's 2043 or 20 something other charge that corresponds to the residential.
Madam Clerk, are there any public comments?
I do not have any public comment.
And we have none here. So do I have a second?
I think.
Madam
Clerk, can you pull up that chart for me?
Certainly.
As the commissioner who represents all of the mobile home parks. I just, and also has a business that, again, downtown businesses, you guys. Have the exact same dumpsters, the exact same pickup schedule, and the downtown businesses all pay commercial rates. This is a business that has an LBTR through the city. They should be paying commercial rates. They're passing it on to the residents. We don't know what they're marking it up to. And it's been residential for years. This is not equitable for the rest of the businesses in our city. And I'm not for hitting them over the head with I can't read this right now, existing MHP rate versus the proposed commercial rate structure, I think is way too high. But we at least need to have a conversation about the commercial dumpster rate, which meets in the middle. The residential right now, we're losing $4,000 a month, $4,000 a year. To provide the same service that the businesses in town pay a higher rate for. That's not equitable. And we're supposed to be up here thinking about the entire city, not just a small portion. So I'm just urging my commissioners, my fellow commissioners, to please think about all the other businesses in town that aren't being treated fairly.
Okay, thank you. Do we know on these mobile home parks, is it one price for the whole thing, or each mobile home is not billed separately, correct?
Correct. And for the record, Jamie Brown, Public Works Director. So the way the mobile home parks are billed, they're commercial properties, but they're collected as if they're residential curbside. So if you look at the Palm Beach County Property Appraiser, each mobile home park has one owner, and then they're commercial because they're 9 units or more. So each month, that particular owner gets a utility bill, and then they delve that out. I don't know if it's monthly, quarterly, however they do that to all their units.
So right now,
But the city only bills that one particular owner.
and now it's currently residential. It's billed as residential.
No, right now it's billed as and that was the issue. If you look at that second table.
Yeah.
Up there, or I'm sorry, the first table on the existing rate.
Right.
They're all different. And when we discussed this back on the January 3rd meeting, that was the initial issue, is that we, going back as far as we possibly could not find where these rates came from, why these are what they are. But if you're a mobile home park in the city, you should be charged the same thing. So we're trying to correct that right now.
But they're picked up individually, but that's the same way the businesses downtown are picked up. It's just like residential, correct?
Correct. So if you look at our actual schedule of fees, there are 2 rates for commercial properties, excluding if you have a dumpster. But as we mentioned last time, there are properties in the city where there's just not physically enough space to have a dumpster. So you would have one of our just black 95-gallon containers like you would for residential. Now, if you're in the downtown area, you're charged at $75.77, which includes 3 times a week collection. And that's on a monthly basis. If you're in any other commercial property in the city outside of downtown, you're charged the $46.13, and that's for twice a week collection. So if you were to look at and I don't know if you could scroll that down a little bit more, Melissa, for those last 2 charts. If you look at that second to the last chart right there, that 4613, that's utilizing that other commercial rate. And that was part of that option.
I just think that's too high. But I mean, the lowest one is using the commercial dumpster rate, like Commissioner Stokes had brought up, and then multiplying out the dumpster versus the gallons and how many, and I know you guys had to go do the math.
Yeah.
But to me, that's just the most equitable way to do it.
And I
It's
did want
still
to
a
make,
business that's being billed.
yeah, I did want to make one correction on that final chart right there under the proposed rates. Those should all be 3382, just like it is for the very first one there. I'm not sure how I messed that up. I apologize. So the actual adjusted city revenue, instead of that 103,291, is actually 103,917. So it changed it by a couple $100, but those rates should all be 3382. I apologize for that. That is the monthly rate, correct? And if you look at that chart, you can see what the existing rate is, what the proposed monthly rate, and then what the difference would be for a property owner or a unit
Which
owner
is still cheaper
inside
than
that
the other
property.
businesses downtown that get billed. Still cheaper.
It depends on how many containers they have. You know, that amount I gave you before, that 75, 77 is per cart. So if you had 2 carts, we double that, 3 cart, and so on and so forth. And that's only for the downtown property.
I'm looking at the difference per unit per month. Which is, I don't know what that is, 5th column or so. Can you scroll up so we can see if we went with the residential rate?
Oh, yeah, Melissa, that's yeah, that next, right there.
Yeah, I think it's that.
Yep.
So.
And again, the reason we had proposed that was only because if you look at our residential rate structure, which means you're 8 units or less per our ordinance, you're charged $245.15 annually as part of your non-ad valorem taxes. And if you actually break that down to monthly, that is that 2043,
But they're over 8 units, they're all over 9, so it doesn't qualify either.
which was the whole issue because you have this, and that's what I mentioned back on the 3rd, it's kind of its own thing. The mobile home parks are their own thing because they are commercial properties, they're collected residential. So you have this weird rate, which really doesn't fall under either.
But again, they're a business and we don't know if they're, whatever rate we're giving them, if they're turning around and charging $45 or $50 a month flat rate to the residents.
No matter what option you guys decide to go with, we still won't know what the end user is going to be charged because we can only bill the actual property owner, which is there's only one for each property. And then they, as a business, decide how they want to charge each unit on their property. There
But
could
it
be,
is a business check that we get. Each person doesn't pay us individually.
no, it comes from that one property
Business.
owner.
Okay.
And then they could tack on an administrative fee. Who knows how they actually charge the residents, but that's not something we can control.
We can't control it. We could. Or it seems like we could ask the property owners what they're doing. We could also ask the residents what they're getting billed. And to me, it seems like the concern is that from the point of view of residents, many of which, and at least some of these are seniors,
Mhm.
so they're somewhat limited income. They're getting picked up basically like a residence. The fact that they're technically part of a business is a weirdness of mobile home parks, but from their point of view, there's a good reason they're getting picked up like a residence, because a lot of them are older and you don't want to have them walking 3 blocks with their stuff. So to me, it's most reasonable to charge them the residential rate.
That's not equitable. There's nothing equitable out there. We are billing a company who has an LBTR. They are a licensed business in the city. We're billing them. They're writing a business check to us. This is not residents. And I have reached out to several people who are in the mobile home business in the city, and they did not want to disclose what they charge, which then made me question, why don't they want to disclose it? You call my gym and ask me, we'll tell you what we charge. But it's just not equitable. And I hear what you're saying in regards to the residents. And I see Commissioner Stokes and Commissioner Diaz, I think, have the lights on. This is one where I think the middle of the road is the fairest way to go.
Which the 33.
Yeah.
I don't,
Yeah, Commissioner Malega is discussing the very bottom chart there, the one that I said the correction should be 3382 for each unit.
I
Commissioner
don't
Stokes?
feel comfortable with that only because they're getting the same service as every other resident. I understand that it's technically a business. If we want to have another conversation about the commercial rates downtown, we can do that, but I don't see comparing residential units like mobile homes to actual commercial businesses in the downtown. So it has its own rate structure. So if we want to look at that, we can. What I'm worried about right now during this housing crisis and everything else, inflation is taking a mobile park. I don't want to give the owners an excuse to pass on more costs to their clients, because if we take somebody who's paying, we're charging them $20 right now a month.
Which is nothing.
And we raise that to $33. So we just raised that 50%. They're gonna turn around and they're gonna pass whatever they want on and say, well, the city just raised their rate, so now we're just passing on whatever they want to pass on. And then we take somebody who's, they're paying $13 a month and raise it to 33. We've over doubled that. What is that business owner gonna do? They're gonna take that and they're gonna do whatever they want to do. And they can pass on the $20 extra a month, or they can pass on $40 extra a
But
month.
our
We
job
have
is
no
to
control over that.
we are supposed to be fiscally responsible for the entire city, and that is not fiscally responsible for the entire city. That's saying that certain people, and again, I hear you, I lived in trailer parks. That's saying that certain people get preferential treatment because of how they're being billed. It is, that's not equitable.
They're getting charged what I'm getting charged. That's what I feel is equitable.
Yeah, and you, although we might not know what the Hope Mobile owners are going to charge their residents, you know that if we raise it to 33, they're gonna at least charge them that.
So it's
They
better
may
for
have
us to
more,
lose
but they're not gonna have
$4,000.
less.
So it's better for us to lose $4,000 of the residents' money to give everybody.
4,000 in the year, yes, it's better. to
That,
lose that.
I don't think that's not fiscally sound.
That $4,000 is for the year.
Yeah, that's an annual. When you look at the adjusted city revenue
Mm-hmm.
under each one of those charts, that is an annual amount.
And also we hear about, we don't have money to do things.
Yeah, but
Separate account.
No, but 4,000 to $109,000 increase, that's big money that could then be turned around and spent on the outside of the mobile home parks. Putting improvements in, making the sidewalks complete, which they
No.
don't have.
What could it be spent on, James?
Well, keep in mind, so the solid waste and recycling division is an enterprise fund.
Right.
So the actual funds that come in, that goes toward, there is an annual transfer to the general fund as part of the budget each year, which I give or take 600,000, something about that. But a majority of the stuff that comes in, it goes right back into our operation. So that's for our actual personnel, that's for
Street sweeper.
equipment, that's for trucks, not street sweeper, because
No.
that's on the streets. So this would be just for recycling. And
So new little blues.
as our trucks cycle out after they're beyond their useful life, that goes into our pot of funds to repurchase.
I just think it's funny, we're having this conversation right before we all start talking to the internal auditor about revenue streams, and now we're just gonna say, okay, it's not equitable, it's unfair, it's unjust, and we're gonna lose money.
I don't think it's fair to charge someone living in a mobile.
Then you're gonna
home
have to
more
look
money
at
than
every
I
single
pay.
business owner in this city and now turn around and lose more money because you're gonna have to meet the same thing that you're doing for the business owners in town. That is not equitable.
I
Jamie, do
would
you?
say one way to.
I think Commissioner Diaz
Yeah.
wants to have his like, oh.
Yeah.
You
Oh.
the battery.
This one's like battery acid all over, so I'm not gonna touch it, but. So Jamie, do you collect data on like how much is collected in the different zones in each area or whatnot? Or is it like just ballpark kind of everything all together?
It's basically everything all
Yeah.
together. So we, everything goes to the SWA, the Solid Waste Authority Transfer Station.
Right.
And that's how we're billed based on tipping fees and everything. But
Right.
we typically don't separate out a particular property other than what we're actually billing them.
Mhm.
To say, well, this particular property is producing X amount, per year.
And just to recap, because when we've discussed this before, like I think my understanding is the way that you came to this rate is because, the organization and the method and the access of how you collect the garbage from the mobile home parks is similar to residential. Because it's, comparing it to all businesses downtown, I think we should maybe have that conversation separately on business and rates. But I think, we're looking at, would you say it's kind of like apples and oranges, because a mobile home, a residential unit produces a certain, probably a fairly consistent amount of garbage and recycling materials, but a commercial business like a restaurant is going to have exponentially way more.
And they usually have dumpsters out.
But not everywhere, because of access in downtown is challenging. So it needs to be spread out across a lot of the smaller bins. And that's, why the rate is different. Is that kind of a fair?
Yeah, that's correct. And again, from the meeting back on January 3rd, the only thing on this chart were those first three columns, and I had only basically given you guys that 2043 residential rate. And based on that conversation is where the two lower graphs came from for this discussion, was to basically give you guys some commercial options as well, and then see where you guys fit.
333 units. I mean, there's a lot of garbage that gets picked up in one park. So it's twice a week.
I have a question, something
ma'am.
like downtown, the Lucerne, some of that. What kind of rate do they get charged?
So if you were.
I don't want to pop quiz you, but if you.
No. So if you're downtown
Yeah.
and you don't have one of the 95-gallon containers, it's because you actually have the space for a dumpster.
Okay.
And then in our annual fee schedule,
Mhm.
there's an actual dumpster rate structure.
Okay.
So based on whether it's a 2, 4, 6, or 8 yard container, and then the frequency per week that's actually collected, you have an actual rate in that chart that you would pay. So if you have a 6-yard container that's collected 3 times a week,
Right.
that's the amount that you're actually going to pay.
Okay. And these mobile home parks don't have dumpsters. They each have their own little garbage cans and recycle cans.
3 of the 4, correct. That is correct. They are collected as residential. They each have their own 95-gallon container, as well as recycling containers, just like you would if you were a single family home in one of the neighborhoods.
To me, it seems like the service we are providing is the same service we provide the residential one. To charge them the same seems reasonable. The fact that it gets laundered through the owner of the thing is a complication, but the service we are providing, the work that we are doing, frequency, type of pickup.
But it's
all
the
that
same
stuff
thing
is
for
the same.
downtown businesses, Mr. McVoy. My business can is the exact same at my business as it is at my home. I get the same pickup twice a week.
3,
My bills are complete opposite.
You get 3.
3 times a week.
Doesn't matter. I still pay a lot more for the same can that I do on my house at East Street than downtown.
And I think you're hearing here, what I'm hearing is that, do we need to re-examine how we build businesses? That might be a reasonable one. I think in terms of analogies, the pickups of the mobile homes are most similar to residential pickups. The charges ought to be.
That's correct. And there's a reason that the rate downtown is, as we've already discussed, it's a lot more difficult to
Exactly.
get into a lot of those areas to empty the trash there. So we're using different types of equipment and different personnel for the downtown
Not
versus
regular.
at your actual
But
residence.
what about the mobile home parks? What size trucks do we use? How difficult it is to get in and around to pick up the garbage cans?
We're still collecting the 95-gallon. It's not Little Blue. We're not using the same machinery that we're using.
Pay
Property.
for water and sewer. Are they commercial rates or are they residential?
That I do not know. I know that they're being charged on their utility bill every single month because they are commercial properties, but I don't deal
So
with.
they're
the
being
water.
charged commercial from the utility.
Well, but I bet the electric, which we knew the answer to this, like my little mobile home would be, I'd get an electric bill, it's not an
Hey.
electric bill, it's individual, thank you, that's the word,
Yeah.
individual electric bill.
I know it's based on meter, and I believe every single one of those
Would be
units
residential.
has their own meter.
Right,
So that would be billed separately.
a residential.
Correct.
Is it a-
Correct. But yeah, I'm not sure about water and sewer. I would imagine that,
We don't know.
I'm not going to imagine.
Because I mean, I have a comment, we pay, a central fee every month for our 6-unit condo. It's all one. I hate to see us lose money. I mean, that's the thing that makes me a little crazy. This is one of those, both sides are
Not every-
valuable and interesting positions. I'm at a loss. We have a public comment card. Let's do that.
Peggy Fisher, 508 North 8th Street. So I didn't move. I think you're right. I agree with Commissioner Galega. It's a business. I would be interested in how the towers is billed on their individual apartments. And I just really put in the card because I'm tired of hearing that there are so many senior citizens in the mobile home parks. Well, I got news for you. There are a lot of senior citizens that are regular citizens living throughout the city, one standing in front of you. And it really is discouraging to hear that, oh, we've got to be so concerned about this group of senior citizens. We should be concerned about all senior citizens. We dragging a 95-gallon dumpster container out from behind a fence, since you have to keep it out of public view if you live in a house, maybe not in a mobile home, to the curb every day, every week, every twice a week. You know, there are other people that are impacted besides just those senior citizens, and you all need to remember that. So, but I agree with Sarah that with the business, and you need to look at other businesses that have multi-residents in them and how they are billed for these services.
Thank you. That would have been helpful information. Commissioner Diaz?
So do we, I mean, it seems like, you know, Jamie proposed this rate structure. I think it's, I hear Commissioner Malega's equitability concerns, and I tend to agree, but I'm kind of separating the two because I feel like we should have that conversation in the future. I mean, you know, what are bigger apartments? We're having more larger developments coming in. So we should probably take a look at those rates. But I feel like from what Jamie has described to me, the way these individual mobile homes, the way they're collected, the process, the scheduling, all that stuff is extremely similar to residential. It's kind of unfortunate that, you know, maybe they deserve their own subcategory or something like that. Because it's kind of, you know, it's that in between. They're residential units, but they are a business. Just like an apartment is a business.
Business, they have an LBT.
Right,
And they
so-
raise the business check.
So, you know, but I think that's a different conversation too, is to look at what are the different commercial rates, you know, downtown and beyond and whatnot.
Profits a break. I mean, we can't keep slicing and dicing everything to fit a small portion. We're talking about equitable for the entire 7 square miles. And that's not equitable.
And in terms of equitability, maybe the way to look at it is having, you know, more, I don't want to necessarily categories, but, you know, not all, like I pointed out, not all businesses are the same in terms of what they're producing in terms of waste. And we should probably kind of consider that, just like how we look at electric utility, you know, depending on how much they use is going to affect how much they're paying. So, you know, maybe that's a fair conversation to have.
And I just wanted to point out that the towers, they have dumpsters, it's a dumpster enclosure. Developments like the one we just listened to for public hearing, they're gonna have a dumpster enclosure and everything. So there is already a rate structure in our fee schedule for that. And it's based on exactly what you're just saying, based on your usage. So if you're not producing enough trash to have a full 8-yard container picked up 5 times a week, then you would be downgraded to a smaller container and picked up less frequently. So it's literally based on that rate structure. It's already set forth in our fee schedule.
But hang on, based on that,
Yep.
me as a business owner, when I went to the city and I tried to lower mine,
Mhm.
it's not an option because the route that I'm on and they don't know whose can's what, and I sit next to 2 other businesses. So you're kind of pigeonholed when you're downtown, that this is what you're paying. It doesn't matter if you produce 3 bags of garbage in a week or
And that's what
3
needs,
1-ton.
and that's probably what needs to be looked at, because you're in a cluster of an alley. So it makes it challenging, and maybe that's something to look at in the future.
Yeah, because as it shows on here, it's based on per container. So the least you could have is 1 95-gallon container. Some properties have more than 1 downtown. Some need 3, and there's not enough space to actually fit a dumpster for that property. So it's just that 75, 77 times however many cans you have.
Ms. Davis has a comment or question.
Just wanted to comment regarding the evaluation of rates. We can keep in mind that during the budget process, when we talk about the rates, we can look at the full commercial issues at that time as well.
it needs to be its own we do like all the rates at once. We
Right.
never really dig down.
Right,
to even
we
have those
compare.
conversations. So I think
That's why we need a business advisory board, because this is when a business advisory board could weigh in and say, this is just, this is equitable, because right now, we're basically saying to all the businesses in the city, we're gonna do this to benefit these people, even though we know they're billing more and they're making more money from the end user, and forget everybody else in town. So I'm not.
If they were billed, if each trailer were to be billed individually, I can see that, that they had their own, like an electric meter, their own, I can see keeping it as residential. And I mean, there's no good answer to this. I don't see it's a good answer to lose money, even if it's only $4,000 a year. I agree with Ms. Malega in the fact that it is a business. We can't control how much is going to be carried down. But I do think we owe a fiscal responsibility to our citizens, to everybody, to not lose money on something which is kind of a commercial venture. So I'm torn because I understand it's more money. So essentially, if we go with what you're looking for, we would be going for 4613 for the
No, it actually would be the one that's titled commercial dumpster rate structure.
Oh, that's the only one we're talking about?
Correct. So that's the
So-
one I said that the monthly unit would actually be the 3382
okay,
on the very bottom.
not the 46.
No, not the one that's the 4613.
Oh.
That was based off of the downtown
Okay,
commercial other.
okay, so sorry, so we're still talking.
And we have 5 minutes into our 5 more minutes left in this discussion.
3 minutes and 46 seconds.
before we run out of
All
time,
right, let's have a motion and just see where that goes.
I believe there were a motion and a second initially.
Do the 2043 resident.
2043. And lose money.
I would like to reframe that. I think that's not a fair statement. The way I am looking at this is that Orange Grove Mobile Home Park has been overpaying for a very long time. And we are going to lose money to correct something that should have never happened. I am looking at this as equitable because a person living in a trailer park home that gets the same service as I do as a single family home owner is paying the same rate that I do. So I will stand by that. We have obviously, you think of equity as comparing commercial business owners in the downtown to a residential person in a trailer park. I view it differently as I'm comparing that resident to myself as a fellow resident. And I'm looking at this as not a loss of revenue, as a unfortunate thing that we have to do because we've been overcharging Orange Grove Mobile Home Park. The other two of them are going to see an increase and one of them is negligible decrease. So that's my take on it. We all have different takes.
Since 1986, too, at least.
So your motion, Chris, is to keep it at 20 or to put it at 2043? Is that,
And
was that a second?
there was.
I had seconded that earlier.
Okay. All in favor?
I,
Opposed? Nay. Okay, passes.
And can we
I'm
commit?
sorry, was that 3-2 or 4-1, Madam Mayor?
3-2. What? I'm sorry.
And can we commit to looking at the commercial rates in the near future? Because I think that, needs to be addressed.
Appreciate that, but a commercial rate's a commercial rate. If somebody's being billed as a commercial business, it doesn't matter where in the city they are a business owner. If they have to pay for an LBTR and they're writing a check. So if we're gonna do it, we have to make it equitable, right? Like a business is a business is a business. Now there's home-based businesses. So, I mean, you really have to look at the whole thing. It's not equitable for the mayor who has a small office is a business owner. Is her being billed differently than the business owner who's got 3 times the square footage.
Jamie, in a
Size
home-based
isn't anything.
business, and if somebody's renting out, I don't know, my dentist operates out of a cottage.
Mhm.
And she's getting her 1 can put out like every other house on that block. What is she getting charged?
If you're, all right, say that one more time.
I have, my dentist
Yep.
has like a little cottage that she probably owns or rents, and she runs her business out of that in the middle of a whole row, I don't know, on M Street. And so if she puts her garbage out on the same day as everybody up and down that road,
Mhm.
how much is she getting charged for? her
And
garbage?
it's on a residential, it's a residential property. Or
It
is
looks,
it?
yeah,
It's a cottage that
it took a cottage and turned it into a dentist office.
Really, it has a business sign outside and it's a
Yeah,
business.
Then
They would be charged, the commercial rate.
they're getting it charged, it's not getting charged to that home's property.
I would have to look at the actual property address, but if it's an actual commercial property for the property appraiser and there's an actual commercial, like a tax,
Business.
yeah, then they would be charged the commercial rate. If
All right.
there's not, and it's just a residential home.
I'm
they'd be
looking it
charged
up.
The 245.
So that's what I'm saying. If
I
we're
know
going
we're
to have
out of
this
time,
discussion, It needs to be equitable across the board. You can't pick and choose who you deem as a business and who you don't deem as a business. That's all
No,
I'm
but you
saying.
might be able to have different categories like they do for different size dumpsters and different frequencies of pickup.
I will say
That's
that
what we're gonna be talking, I mean.
as part of
Yes, we
the,
have, thank you, Ms. Fisher. We appreciate your input.
After listening. Rob, what were you gonna say?
I was going to say that there will be an opportunity, obviously, during the budget process this year. There are some things I do want to bring forward on some of our rates, commercial, big, some of that. Just kind of getting up to speed on a lot of things because we haven't done anything with our rates in a while. But no, I'm just saying CPI, fuel cost adjustment, things like this that historically have not been part of our rate structure. It's something that's impacting the bottom line. And when we see the fuel costs do what they did over the past year, but our rates kind of stay like this, there is an effect there. So I want to start bringing that forward as part of the budget process so we can start having those conversations. So we will definitely have opportunity to discuss everything we're talking about right now as part of the budget. I see you're so excited.
So tired.
Motion to adjourn.
Wait, do we need to hear from city attorney?
Do you have a report?
My only
Thank you.
question is on the redistricting. You said I'm going to every 10 years on the 4, so 24, 34, 44, not 20, not 32.
Year after.
Right, because
Right.
the census is on the 10th year, so it'll be the 4th year. Okay. Just making sure.
Right, the fourth year.
Right, so
Fourth
so
year.
if so for example, the 2020 census,
Right.
you're redistricting for the 2024.
Oh, no, we want to
election.
get back in line.
Yeah.
This year
So
might
if
be
you
like
want to
7
get back in
years,
line to
and then every 10.
2022, then the first go around will be 8 years and then you'll go to 10 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I wanted to clarify.
It probably has to be.
It has to be after the census.
Yeah.
We need
After the
results of
census.
Yeah, it has to be written probably to be in response to census, because if it doesn't have,
Because sometimes
barring
the census, like
not
this year
happening
was
for whatever
late.
Reason.
All
Yeah.
right. We'll check with FAU and see what they're suggesting.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all I have.
That's it. All right. Motion to adjourn second, all in favor?
Bye.
Good night, everyone.